Welcome in, Mr. Ed White. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's good being here.
So, as a part of our Legends in the Spotlight series here with Sports Legends USA, we want to get to know you and the man behind the legacy. So, walk us through your earliest days. Did you always want to play football? Was that your life goal as a young man? How did this career in football get started for you?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a life goal, but it was something that I loved doing, and I did it as much as I could. I played out in the street. A bunch of us, I'm from a little town outside of the city of San Diego, Lemon Grove, excuse me, and we would gather at the junior high school and play tackle football as long ago as I can remember. And it was kind of an unusual group, but about six of the 10 guys, the kids that gathered and played every Saturday, ended up getting major college scholarships. And there was no coaching, so I don't know what that says for coaching.
All those hours
But
paid
anyway,
off.
what's that?
All of those hours playing street ball it paid off.
Oh, it did. Yeah, no question. But I've just always loved it, and it was hard to leave it. Even as a coach, it was hard to leave it because of all the relationships, the camaraderie you have with the players and teammates, and all that is tough to set aside.
How did you gravitate towards the lineman position?
Uh, well, and this is kind of an odd story. I really see myself as a defensive lineman, and I wish I'd have had an opportunity to play defensive line because it's so instinctive and reactionary, and it took advantage of a lot of the skills that I had. And unfortunately, the Vikings at that time, they're the team that drafted me, and they needed offensive linemen. They had the purple people eaters, so they didn't see a need for me. And Jerry Reichout was the director of scouting then, and he just said something not too long ago that he was battling to keep me on defense, but it didn't happen, and so my path ended up being one of an offensive lineman, and I probably ended up playing a lot longer. I don't know if that was a benefit now, but I played a lot longer as an offensive lineman than I would have as a defensive lineman because they had guys like Conrad Dobler that would go for your knees and things like that. So I probably stayed a lot healthier playing in the offensive line. So it was probably for my best.
So, going off of that, offensive linemen, they're asked to do a lot of dirty work, and oftentimes they just don't get a lot of love compared to some of the skill position guys. What was your mentality as a player to keep you going and sort of survive and excel as an offensive lineman?
Well, first of all, you're right. When things go well, it's always the quarterback and the receivers and the running back. And, it's I watch the offensive line. That's what I focus on. And I'm watching, the combination blocks, how they pick up things together, uh, how they work as a unit. And so my eye is trained for that. But most people watch the runner, the receiver, and the quarterback, and listen to what the announcers say. And the only thing, one time you get your focus is when you create a holding penalty or some kind of penalty. So it's
Right.
kind of a bit thankless in that regard. But I focused on uh, concentrated on just playing as full speed every play, and that's what I focused on. And you know, I would I would analyze the first thing you'll do. You analyze what's in front of you.
Mhm.
How's the guy? How's he in his stance? Is there a weight difference in terms of, does he look like he's going to stunt? Is he closer to the guy next to him? Uh, what are you over a linebacker, and how deep is he? And what are the chances that they're going to blitz? And you can usually get a pre-snap indication of what they're going to do, actually, and that tied into the film study and all the work you do the week before. you put that all together, and you got a pretty good idea of what's going on before the snap, and that's key. And then, to me, it was about I wanted to be the first guy moving on the line. I wanted to be attacking, and so there wasn't, you don't have a lot going on in your mind when you're thinking about kind of being a mad dog and getting after somebody.
I love it. So, with that, was there ever any defensive players that just gave you a really hard time? Like, who was a pesky defensive lineman that you had to go up against that stands out?
Oh man, I played against a lot of great ones. Joe Green, Joe was excellent. Uh, Bob Lilly. I think probably Bob Lilly is the guy that comes to my mind the most because he was so intelligent, and people don't uh, they underrate the brain, and when they look at a football player, I think Bob Lilly. I felt like he knew what I was doing before he moved. I mean, he just knew what was going on, and he had, the extremities. His arm reach was long, and he was fantastic. And on top of that, he's a great guy, and I have a friendship with him to this day. He's email each other and so on, and I would put him at the top of the list for sure.
So, you played on the offensive line during the heyday of the Purple People Eaters. Does that mean every day in practice you had to go up against the Purple People Eaters?
Well, specifically Alan Page. He was across from me daily, and it was a battle every day. In fact, toward the end of my career, Bud called me in. I was playing left guard, and so I'd practice against Alan. He was the right defensive tackle, and and we would just go to war in practice. And Bud called me and said, I'm going to move you to right guard. You and Alan are going at it too bad, and you're beating each other up, and we think it'd be a good move, and you'd get to play next to Ranieri, and it worked out great. And I was cool with that, and so it was a good move, and got to play next to my buddy, who's my neighbor now out here, and things are good.
That's awesome. So, I want to take it back a little bit to your college days. You played at University of California, Berkeley, right?
Correct. Yeah.
What was that experience like? Cal is maybe not your prototypical football powerhouse, and especially when you look back at the era you were there, it was kind of known for being more of a forefront of social change. What was your experience like going to Cal Berkeley in the 60s?
Well, I loved it. I was from grew up in Lemon Grove, and then we moved down to the desert, to Palm Desert, outside of Palm Springs, and that was just a small desert community. And I went to Indio High School, which was primarily Hispanic student body and small friends that played football, and it was great experience for me. And I just fell in love with the Bay Area.
Hmm.
Out there being in the desert for the 4 years of my high school, and the Bay Area was green and beautiful and blue ocean, and then going to the school and campus and seeing everything. And Ray Wilsey was the coach, and I just fell in love with the whole picture. And it ended up being a good choice for me. I majored in landscape architecture, took a lot of art, and that's what I do now. I'm an artist and full time, but I was a landscape architect in St. Paul when we lived back there. I worked for the Housing and Redevelopment Authority as a landscape architect. And so I utilized my degree. We all had to work. Grady Alderman came to work with his briefcase, and he was a CPA. And back then we had to have two jobs.
Hmm. So, what you mentioned your passion for art. Has that always kind of been there, and how has it helped you later on after football?
It's always been there. I've been an artist since I can remember. As a small boy, there was a win a scholarship to draw a picture of the horse, and it showed a horse, and I drew the picture, sent it in, and they wrote me back and said, "Good job, but it's obvious you traced it," and I didn't trace it, so it really fired me up. And but I've always had a passion for art. I've been blessed with the talent, and it puts me in a state of mind that I enjoy being in. I just lose myself in it, and I just have a passion for it, and I do it all the time.
So, for those who maybe aren't familiar with your art, what is your go-to medium? What kind of art are you usually creating?
Well, I do everything. I do whatever is inspiring me, and right now I'm doing a little abstract, but being a landscape guy and a nature guy, and having spent the time in Minnesota on lakes and in the woods, and just enjoying that environment, along with the beautiful things out here, the ocean and the mountains here. I love doing landscape stuff, and I do football stuff. I do abstract stuff. I do whatever I feel like. I'm my own boss now. Well, if somebody wants to look at it, I want to be able to. Yeah, I pretty much post everything. I enjoy that. I enjoy the feedback and the camaraderie with people that enjoy looking at my art.
Yeah. We'll put a link to your website in the description of this video too, and we'll get some people checking out the art.
Awesome.
So
Great.
you just mentioned how your art was sort of inspired by where you've lived. You know, you've lived in the, as you said, the desert of Southern California to the frozen tundra of Minnesota. How would you compare your experience in life in Minnesota versus California? And do you have a preference?
Uh, I do not have a preference. Only that as I get older, it would have been harder to fight the ice and going out to the car and
Hmm.
doing some of the things that you have to do in a harsher environment. But we loved it. We lived out in Rosemont. We lived out on a dirt road on the edge of a farm and on the edge of a small lake, and we absolutely loved it. Our kids were all born and raised there, and so they grew up with that. And then when we moved up to San Diego, we moved up to Julian, which is a mountain town, an old gold mining town, which is our north or south or west, excuse me, west of San Diego, and up in the mountain, about 5,000 foot. So we've always been kind of outdoor oriented people, and so we've always found that base that makes us feel good, and it always involves something about nature.
So speaking of nature, one thing that I kind of uncovered about you, Ed, is that one time you wrestled a bear.
Yes,
What's the story?
it was in Minnesota, and like I said, we didn't make a lot of money back then, and so it was like $50. The Vikings say, "Hey, we got a deal. A little appearance at the state fair." I went, "Oh, okay." I come to the state fair. There's a guy with a freaking bear, and he goes, "Well, you're going to wrestle this bear." I went, "What?" And so anyway, I wrestled him. I don't think the bear beat me. He didn't get me down. But what happened was it was on the edge of a casting pond, and you know how they at the state fair there they do a casting demonstration,
Yeah.
and so they have a pond. And anyway, we were wrestling up on that deal, and I was a wrestler in high school, and so I knew a little bit about wrestling. And the Bears' main technique was a leg drag, where they drag and try to catch your legs from behind, and then pull you under and lay on you. Well, the antidote for that is to bar out. You bar out and you kick out. So I was barring out and kicking out because he was continually. Well, I barred out and kicked out into the pond, the casting pond, and the place went crazy. People started howling, and I was embarrassed, and I got pissed. And I jumped out of that thing, and the bear started running away from me, and he ran over the. There was a. They were entertaining. They had a drummer and all that stuff set up, and the bear ran over the drums and it was a Russian trainer. His name was Ivan. I remember every detail of this. And Ivan was chasing me as I was chasing the bear. He said, "Don't chase my bear." But I chased him off the stage. So I think I don't know if he won or I won. I was wet. He was afraid.
You know, on paper, that doesn't seem like a fair fight, right? The Bear's probably a few weight classes above you, but it sounds like you put up a good fight.
Well, I learned something. I think that the senses of an animal is very keen, and they sense more of the adrenaline for fear or anger or whatever, because that bear was definitely afraid of me, and there's no reason he should have been.
Oh my goodness, that's an excellent story. Had to bring that one up.
Yeah.
So, going back to your career on the field, you are one of 11 players to have played in all four Vikings Super Bowl appearances. What comes to mind when you think back on those Super Bowls?
Oh man. Well, it's sadness. The first thing that I think about is it's sad that we each of those years came so far. Sad that a lot of the guys that I worked next to, Mick Tingelhoff, Milt Sunday, Grady Alderman, Doug Davis, on the offensive line are no longer here. And I think about the fact that, what we missed, just winning one of them would have been so unbelievable. But to achieve what we achieved was phenomenal. To be the second best team in football is pretty amazing for all those years. And so that's the thing I regret is the loss of not being able to experience that with my teammates.
What is the feeling in a locker room after a Super Bowl like that?
Well, it's just like as if you haven't won anything, and like I said, we were a great team. We had great coaches. The coaches, they put together the right guys. They did the right things. They treated us like men. When we wanted to act like boys, they let us act like boys, and they were just super. And it, it's sad for all of us, coaches, the staff, the whole organization, that we could go so far and not win the prize. It's like you achieved nothing.
So, when you look back at your career and you were obviously able to brush elbows with legends, right? Now, it
Yep.
feels like the sentiment among Vikings fans and Minnesotans who have been around and been watching the team for a while is that they can't get enough Bud Grant stories. Do you have any stories about Coach Grant?
Well, yeah, the one that comes to mind was I was in the huddle, and all of a sudden I felt Bud standing behind me, and I'm going, "Oh, brother!" And I turned around and I go, "Yes, Bud, what's up?" He goes, "Your sideburns." I said, "My sideburns? Yeah, I'm in a helmet and I'm in the huddle." I go, "My sideburns?" He goes, "Yeah, they're too long." So I cut my sideburns up to the bottom of at the top of my ears the next day. he I love Bud, and I just love the way he ran everything. He he put the best players next to me on the field that we could have. He understood talent. He understood how to play the game because he was a player, and all the coaches were as well. And he just he was what he was. He was. And my father was kind of like Bud, just a quiet man, and Bud was quiet, and when he said something, you listened, and I enjoyed that, and uh, like I said, he surrounded all of us with the best players. He had a great nose for talent in Jerry Burns and Jerry Reichow with the scouting and all that. Was just top notch, and that's the reason you know, I guess we won. I think we won the Central Division 6 years out of 8 years, 6 out of 9 that I was there. I'm not sure. You can check me on that, but
I believe you.
yeah, I think it was something like that.
So
I've
you're
had a few knocks on the head.
So you're a kid from Southern California. You've lived amongst the warmth of the Southern California desert, and you end up a Minnesota Viking, a team synonymous with the cold, the northern frozen tundra, and you're playing in an era where the Vikings play outdoors. What is the coldest game you remember playing in, and did you wear sleeves?
coldest game I ever played in was in San Diego. We played Cincinnati, and it was like 80 below with wind chill.
Yeah, that's the famous game, right? That's the coldest
Yeah,
game ever, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's the coldest game I ever played in. But in Minnesota, we played in. Bud had us practice, in St. Paul at the old stadium, and we went out and practiced, no matter how cold it was, and so we were ready for anything. We had the mentality that it was going to be a lot colder for the other team coming in, and that was why it was a big advantage when we had home field advantage in the first game of the playoffs, and we played the 49ers or we played the Rams. That was huge. Those guys, and then I was on the other side of things when I played for the Chargers. And it was like the equipment man was putting, scuba diving gloves on people, and we were dressed like the abominable snowman, and I'm going, too much emphasis on the weather, and sure enough, we got our butts kicked, and and we didn't have an emphasis on the weather because we went out and practiced in it and played in it every day, and as a resident growing up there, we did the same thing. We had snowmobiles, and our little kids had little kitty cats. And every Friday night, our neighborhood out in Rosemont would go down to a little pub down in Northfield, and drive the snowmobiles, and no matter what the conditions, and we'd all be nice and warm, and have some food together, and head back, and that was our ritual, and we enjoyed, what God provided for us, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. Embracing that northern culture. So, okay,
Yeah.
did you wear sleeves in those super cold games though? I'm dying to know.
Dang, I don't remember. I don't think so. I think, we wanted to man it up, and
Yeah.
so we froze. But somebody's going to end up with a picture of me with sleeves on. So I'm pleading the brain damage card.
All right. I think that's plenty fair. All right, Ed. Thank you so much. We'll wrap it up here. Really appreciate you taking the time to jump on and share a little bit about your story. You had some great stories, and we'd love to have you on again.
Well, I love it, and my wife and I are both big time Viking fans, and we loved watching the game last night. We got off to a slow start, and I'm tied even closer because Kevin was one of our players at San Diego State,
Oh
and
yeah.
I was coaching the line in front of him, and he's a great, great, great young man, and I have all the confidence and faith in him, and I love seeing the way the players are responding to him. That you can see the type of person he is, and I wish him and the team the best of luck.